I would like to give you an insight into how I start in oil painting. I will give you some tips that may be helpful for your own paintings. I started with this painting in my last video. While I'm continuing with it, it's a great opportunity to show you how I started. I think a lot of you are interested in how to build a canvas and what to pay attention to in the process, and how to go on from there. I assembled the canvas for this painting myself. Of course, you could buy a ready-made canvas, but then you are not as flexible. I couldn't do this painting as it is because the art shops in my area don't sell canvases this big. To be exact, it is 200 centimeters by 160 centimeters, or about 11 bananas wide and 8.5 bananas high, for all of you not using the metric system. You should always use the right stretcher frame for your canvas. I had some regular, not that strong stretcher bars in the size I needed lying around, and I thought they maybe could be strong enough. However, my optimism was soon be punished. Let me explain. Raw, unprimed painting cloths tighten up a lot when primed. And if you use cotton, it tightens up even more than other fabrics like linen or polycotton. If the stretcher frame is not strong enough, it can bend or warp or even break. After you assemble the stretcher frame, you can start to stretch the fabric onto the frame. Stretch the canvas tight, but not too tight. If you use pre-primed fabric, you can stretch it tighter than raw fabric, but don't pull with all your strength. The bars must not bend. You need to develop a feel for stretching, but it's easier than it sounds, and you should get the hang of it after 2 to 3 canvases. Otherwise, the stretching process is pretty straightforward. You lay the painting cloth with the side you want to paint on facing down. It's best to do this on a table, and when the canvas is too big, on a carpet, so the fabric doesn't get damaged. Lie the assembled stretcher frame on the painting cloth. Center it and start to staple the fabric to the back of the stretcher bars. Start from the middle of every bar to prevent wrinkles. Alternate between all 4 sides every time you put a staple in to get the best result. Most of the time I stretch the canvas only with my hands, so I can feel better how tight the canvas is stretched. You can also use special canvas pliers like this one. Only be a bit more careful, because you can overstretch the canvas easier with those. I used raw linen for my canvas, and I didn't stretch it so tight because I wanted to prevent warping or bending, especially because I didn't use the strongest stretcher bars. Once I finished stretching the canvas, I started priming. And here I had a bad feeling about my stretcher frame, because the canvas felt way too wobbly. If you paint with oils, I highly recommend you to use a primed canvas. Oil paints require a sealed surface to prevent the paints from being absorbed by the fabric or any other absorbent underground. If the oil is absorbed, the fabric will become brittle and will over time get slowly eaten by the drying oils. The paint will also look matte and crumbly because the pigments can become unbound if enough oil is absorbed from the paint. Properly sealed surfaces make your oil paints look brighter and more glossy. Traditionally, fabrics are sealed with a size like rabbit skin glue and a ground like chalk gesso. I use a more modern alternative, acrylic gesso. This acts as both size and ground. There are many different brands of primers, and every of them has a different mixture. Some are more absorbent than others, and I recommend you to try a few until you find one that you like. Apply the gesso in many thin layers until you can no longer see light come through when you put the canvas against the light. You should thin the first layer with water and scrub it into the weave. Let every layer dry for about 3 hours. The layers should be applied thinly to prevent cracking. If you want to reduce brush marks, apply it even thinner. I usually apply 3 to 4 layers. Back to my canvas with its weak stretcher bars. I didn't even finish the first layer of priming, and what I was afraid of happened. The stretcher bars started warping and bending, and then they snapped. I had to provoke it, didn't I? The linen cloth is tightened so much that the bars crumbled under the pressure. And this is why you should never use cheap material. After this fail, I finished priming the first layer and then I had to disassemble the whole canvas and start over again. I had to buy some new stretcher bars, some much stronger ones, and after I assembled the new stretcher frame, I stretched the lining cloth on it. And then I finally could finish the priming. So let's start with the painting. Hold on, I skipped an important part. Before I can start with the canvas, I have to decide on a format and how big the canvas will be. To do this, I need to know what I want to paint. I start every of my paintings with an idea from which I create a concept. For me, the concept is an essential part of my process. As one of my professors once said, the art lies in the concept, and I agree with that. I want my paintings to carry a message. I like to deal with social matters, and I find the things that normally get unnoticed are worth exploring. On some of my concepts, I spend way too much time, but I think I'm not alone with that. During the implementation, I try to not lose my concept out of sight, but if the final work is a bit different, it's also fine for me. Tiny little accidents that can make your work better. During the concept phase, I draw a lot of sketches. The sketches help me to get my ideas out of my head, and based on them I can decide what could work. The concept sketches don't have to be beautiful, they just have to visualize their ideas. Based on my concept, I can now make some important decisions for my painting. So to summarize, I start with an idea which I develop into a concept. The concept helps me to make important decisions like the size of the canvas. Then I build and prime the canvas, and after that I finally can start with the painting. Most of my paintings I start with an underpainting. The underpainting is really helpful to get the composition onto the canvas. You often see that the underpainting is painted in earth tones like burnt umber. Those earth tones give you a solid base to build your painting on. But I also use more vibrant colors. I like it when they shine through the upper layers of the painting. I keep my color palette limited to only one or just a few colors. But you can use any color you want. And to be clear, you don't have to start with an underpainting. You can start your painting however you like. There is no right or wrong. I would recommend you to follow the basic principles of oil painting and then find your way from there. I'm always happy to receive feedback, and I would love to hear how you start your painting. Thanks for watching and enjoy the process.